novel and novel and occupational hazards. Novel inspired by the Franklin Credit Union.
The 11th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Kathy Wyatt.
A newsroom thriller hits the bookstands, one that may have special interest to Nebraskans. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Occupational Hazards, a novel inspired by the bizarre events surrounding the Franklin Credit Union pedophile sex ring scandal of 1988. Joining us today to talk more about it are author Jonathan Segura and former colleague and editor of The Reader, John Heaston. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And
good to be here.
Great. Okay, Jonathan, we're going to start with you. Before we talk specifically about the book, let us know about your connection to Nebraska.
I pretty much grew up here. My father was Air Force, so he was stationed here in '88 and retired here 14 years later. Or no, that's when I left, is 14. He retired at some point, and they're still here. And then I left in '02.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been in New York since then. So that's, and I went to school here at UNO. My degree is from here, before they did all this construction outside.
Well, excellent. And one other question, you dedicate the book that we're going to be talking about to your folks. Talk a little bit about your parents.
Yeah, they're really happy about that one. I don't believe they've read it. I told them not to, but they claimed they did and they liked it. But they're parents, so they're probably lying.
Of course,
to me.
they'd have to say that, yes.
But no, they're still here. They live in Bellevue. My pop works at First National, and my mom runs a quilting studio, Zeffie's Quilts.
Okay. All right, so tell us about this book. Give us kind of a quick read through occupational hazards.
Well, here's the elevator pitch, which I've been practicing and I'm still awful at. It is it's a very dark comedy. It's set in Omaha. Here we are. About a reporter named Bernard Coburn who gets in over his head professionally and personally in a number of different ways. And the novel just follows him as he tries to,
Well, he keeps getting deeper into trouble, trying to get out of it, yeah.
Yeah, but it just gets worse for him. I don't want to give away the ending, but, there's an ending to it.
Okay. A little bit more about the plot for people who really do like a good mystery, and especially those who do remember back to what happened in 1988. Talk to us a little bit about that connection.
Yes. Well, the connection, where that comes from, and it is based on the Franklin Credit Union scandal. And what happened, essentially, is when I was writing it, is I realized that I needed to put a plot in it, because for many drafts there was no plot, so something had to happen. And so I went back and thought, well, what's something kind of quintessentially Omaha, and that would make for a good plot that would be interesting and dark and weird and fit with the character and the tone of the book. And while there are many different things, I'm sure, episodes from Omaha's past to choose from, this one I thought was about perfect. So I kind of took what I remembered of the coverage and the urban myths that still are bouncing around. I didn't do really a whole lot of real research because facts are pretty inconvenient for my purposes in this. And sort of blew them up, and you don't really have to make them more absurd than what they already are. They're pretty crazy as is. And it worked out in a hopefully a way that readers will find fun and perhaps educational in a misguided, inappropriate way.
And it is your first novel.
Yes.
So you really did. I mean, in your lifetime, you really did have a lot of things that could have inspired your first book. So really, what was it for those people out there who are considering maybe going down this path of becoming an author? What was it that really captured your attention about this particular issue when you probably had a lot of others from which to choose?
Well, I had a very boring life growing up, so I didn't have a whole lot of stuff to choose from. But I mean, what specifically about this issue, I think it was just how over the top and crazy the allegations were, and the fact that it was pursued as an actual story. And maybe this actually happened, maybe it didn't, nobody knows. Or maybe part of it did and other parts didn't, but it's just a very, very bizarre story. And it's just inherently interesting, like it's so enduring, and you still hear about it. And that's kind of what hooked me.
Okay, and when was it, and this is probably a question that a lot of folks are wondering, when was it that you first knew you wanted to be an author? And talk to us about the journey since that time frame.
Well, I've always, from a young age, I've really enjoyed writing. And I've always done well in English classes. And when I was in high school, I signed up for a creative writing class, because they offered it, so why not take it? And then they canceled the class because nobody, or I think, 4 of us signed up for it maybe, so there wasn't enough interest in the student body for the class, so the class got canceled, and I had to fill an elective, so I took journalism, which involves writing, which sort of put me on the journalism road. So I did that through high school in Bellevue. I want to kind of go on a little, I'm not going to do it though, never mind. Went to school here, got my journalism degree, graduated in 2001, and actually while I was wrapping up school here, I started freelancing for The Reader. And that's how I met this guy. No, that's when I was an intern. I was an intern first.
I think you were doing the intern thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you started writing. And at that point, actually, you were getting published in The Reader, and I had left The Reader and started a paper called the Omaha Weekly, or was getting ready to. And as I was getting ready to do that, tracked John down and said, this is a guy who can write, who's obviously not afraid to go, different places and look at different things. If I had to find somebody to cover the news at the time and to take on stories that maybe other people don't, it would be great if I could get them. And so I think it was over at, right there in Dundee at the home of the Big Bear. Well, anyways, we had some drinks, and I said, "Hey, we're doing this
Underwood.
at the Underwood Bar."
Yep.
And said, I'm getting ready to start a weekly publication, and so that's when John came on, full time as the news editor, and we kind of launched from there.
And talk to us about that working relationship. How long were you actually with The Reader, and what transpired there?
Well, I freelanced for The Reader for maybe 6-8 months before I started with the Weekly as on staff with John when we started the paper. I say we, mostly he started, and I just kind of showed up.
Well, there was 3 of us, so
yeah.
it was we.
Okay.
God, that was awesome. And so, it was a small operation, 3 of us. But somehow we put out a paper every week and I was there for 2 years. And I left in August of 2002. I started there in the beginning of 2000, I guess, when we started. It was
March
2000. We're like an old married couple here.
Filling in dates.
And as soon as I left and I moved to New York, he went and bought out The Reader, which kind of made me feel bad that as soon as I left, it got good.
We were just waiting, yeah.
It's like, get Zigger out of here and we can move.
Now, for those folks who aren't familiar with that particular publication, tell us what The Reader is, John.
Well, I was one of 5 that started The Reader in '94, and had done a free monthly prior to that called Sound News and Arts, which was a nonprofit, all-volunteer publication, but in the modern era, with all due respect to the Sun and the Metropolitan, kind of the alternative voice in Omaha. And out of 5, there were 2 of us that founded it. It's a long, twisted story, but I left in '99. Love this business, love what we're doing, and so started another paper, which was the Omaha Weekly in 2000, right about the point that my ex-partner had sold the Reader, and in 2002, I bought the Reader back, is what happened. It was late 2002.
Okay, and Jonathan, that's when you said you left was about 2002. How
August
did you
is-
go from there to Brooklyn then? What was the journey between the time you left there to where you are now?
Well, I went to New York to go to grad school, which 2-year writing program at Columbia. I did that. I lived in this awful little studio apartment in Harlem under a bridge next to a really busy bus stop. It's good stuff. I was there in that apartment for a while, and then I, as many people do, they when their subsidized student housing runs out, they move to Brooklyn where it's much cheaper, although it's not much cheaper anymore. And that's how I got to Brooklyn. I've been there, I don't know, a good 4 or 5 years now. And now, I'm kind of living the dream out there. Wife, dog, apartment, drinking problem.
Job at Publishers Weekly?
Job at Publishers Weekly. What else could I want?
Yeah.
And a book.
And a book. Now, how did you choose to go to Columbia then? What was I'm sure you had several options, and what was the draw there?
I didn't have several options.
You didn't?
No. I had one option, and that was it.
And how did that come up? How did that come into play?
I applied to one.
Oh, well.
And why that one?
I applied to that. I had several requirements, which had to be in a large city far away from Omaha. Not that I don't love it here, but I just had to get away. And that the school did not require a GRE for the entrance to the grad program because I hadn't taken it and I didn't have the time or the interest to take it either. So I did a lot of looking around, and there was only one school that I found that I was interested in that was a good writing program that fit that criteria, and that was Columbia. So I sent off the application packet after doctoring the letters of recommendation, and they kind of forgot about it. And I got a phone call about 4 months later, and they said, "Welcome aboard." And that was it, and up and out.
Okay, now tell us a little bit more about the job that you work during the day. In addition to being an author, what is it that you do during the day?
I am the deputy reviews editor of Publishers Weekly, and my beat predominantly is literary fiction, or actually general fiction is probably a better word for it. And that it's an umbrella that covers everything from werewolf sex novels to, Salman Rushdie and John Updike. It doesn't, genre things, sci-fi, mysteries, I don't handle those there. But predominantly what I do is I work with, we have about 80 reviewers that I work with, who I assign them books. They read them, review them, they send it in, and I edit the reviews. And there's a bunch of other, editorial tasks that go along with it. When you work in a magazine as an editor, you have to read page proofs and annoying, budget stuff and things like that. But it's probably 70-80% of the job is just spent editing book reviews.
Okay, and with this book just on the shelves a few days ago, speaking of reviews, let's talk about what some folks have had to say about occupational hazards. We have some graphics here that we can go to, and the first one is Kirkus Reviews, and they basically say it's a profane, grimly witty newsroom noir set on the mean streets of Omaha. Smart, fast-paced, cleverly plotted, and with a gritty and persuasive city setting, an auspicious debut. Now, before we go to the next one, what do you think about that, Jonathan? I mean, when you read that and you're going to digest it a bit, accurate? No? What do you think?
I'm not going to argue with it, since they were nice to me. No, actually, I was very surprised and pleased to see that review when it came out, because Kirkus and Publishers Weekly are the two main trade publications that offer early book reviews. So, they are Publishers Weekly's competitor, is one way to look at it. And I surely thought that if anybody was going to come out with the hatchets, it would be them. And they didn't, So it was. I sort of felt like, oh well, maybe the book isn't total garbage at that point, because as a sensitive artist, you think what you've done is awful trick.
Do you really think that, or are you pretty proud of what you've done? In all honesty.
Oh, she's got to pull the honesty card.
That's right.
I hate that.
Did I pull it too soon? I'm sorry.
No, you got to save that for the last 5 minutes.
We could table it, but I'm afraid then we wouldn't get it in. So
No, I am very proud, and I know how difficult it is to publish a book, and I'm very lucky to have done it and to work with the people that I work with. I have a great editor, I have a great publicist, I have a great agent. They're very supportive. They're into the book. They believe in it, and you know, with anything that you spend. I mean, how many years did I spend working on that thing? I mean, you look at it, it's not that fat. You know, it's a little book, and it's probably 4 years of working on it. And with anything you spend that much time with, you get to hate it. Of course, it's like a relationship. Sometimes you really hate your editor.
Yeah. Happens all the time.
All the time. But at this point, I'm good with it.
I think what you're getting is kind of the taste of the sarcasm and the dark humor.
Yeah.
That is a little bit of John's, trademark, and you really get in the book as well. I mean, that gives it that energy.
And I do want to talk about that in a little bit. I want to get to this other review, so we have a second one, and this one is from Publishers Weekly that we're going to go ahead and put up. And then
My
we're
employer.
Talk a little bit. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about the road to finishing the book. They say it's crisp, raunchily amusing debut. Coburn is the sort of dysfunctional dude, immature, posturing, hapless, that will keep readers intrigued and should appeal to fans of Chuck Palahniuk and Arthur Nersessian. So your employer, did they do okay?
I suppose.
You'll take.
we get it
You'll
right every
take.
now and again.
Okay.
No, it's good. No, I get asked a lot, how are they going to handle your review, when it comes in, because I, edit book reviews, and this is a novel and could theoretically fall under my beat. It didn't. Another editor handled it, who works with reviewers that I've never talked to, don't know who they are, they don't know who I am. So when the review came in, it was nice to see.
And one more review then before we go back to the road of actually getting to writing and publishing a book like this. John, what do you think of all of this? What do you think of his writing in general? Did this surprise you that he got to where he is?
Not at all. I mean, he was an extremely talented writer. I mean, he's got a great sense and outlook that he can translate into writing. So I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, very proud of him. Impressed. It's no small feat. Certainly to accomplish. But I think the thing to understand about the book, or at least my take on it, is it's really got this sensibility that Johnny does a great job of capturing, and because of that, it's so compelling, and the dialogue is so tight. I mean, and the elements, related to the Franklin Credit Union. I mean, there are pieces there. If you're from Omaha and you know some of the stories, you'll recognize it. But it really is its own tale. And and there's some elements that I kind of remember from Omaha Weekly days and assignments, and vigilante neighborhood association groups was a late night neighborhood watch on Park Avenue vigil.
Yeah, that was good times.
Not to give away details of the book, but I think I would encourage him to keep writing. Anything like this. As you do it more, you find your style, you find your rhythm. Even better, you explore new areas, and so whatever happens, however the book sells, I hope he keeps writing. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would hope so as well.
And no small task. You mentioned that, and Jonathan, I do want to go back to, I think for those of us who just go to the bookstore and pick up something off the shelf, and we have the luxury of sitting back and reading it, we don't really take into account what goes into something like that. So can you take us from the start of this, and you did kind of at the beginning of the interview when you were talking about why you selected this particular issue, but talk about that journey and how much time and effort and persistence and all the rest that it really does take to get a book like this published.
Well, it took me a very long time, a number of years, obviously, in that. Once you have a draft done, a first draft of a novel, which in and of itself takes a long time. When I finished the first draft of this, it was basically a very bad French novel, and you step away from it for a couple weeks and you read it again, and you realize how awful it is, and that you have to rewrite it, and you have to rewrite it, and you have to rewrite it, and you rewrite and throw things out and put new stuff in, and you condense and you move your chapters around. And then you'll read it again, and then you'll throw it out again. You start over. It's it's full of self-loathing. There's a lot of that goes into this. What else goes into it? There's a lot of drinking for me that went into it, but never when I was writing. And I mean, it's just persistence and hard work, and it's not something you can dash off. I mean, people do dash them off, and you can tell when they are dashed off. And they're the people that make a lot of money doing this. Sadly, I still have a day job.
Well, and I would imagine too, being an editor and someone with your background, and John can probably speak to this too, I would imagine you are much harder on yourself than someone who is putting together a book based on, you know, experience or whatever the case may be, who really is not going to be their biggest, worst critic. I mean, this is what you do for a living, so you probably were second guessing yourself quite a bit. You probably were a little bit too hard on yourself as the process unfolded.
Oh yeah, I wrote all the bad reviews before I even wrote the book, you know. And you know, what I realized is that the world really doesn't need any more writers. I mean, there are plenty of them out there. There are more books being published now than ever. And would it make a difference if this one came out or not? Probably not. So, I mean, you really have to convince yourself that you're doing something worthwhile. For a very long time, you have to be convinced of that. And some days it's difficult.
And you say that there wouldn't be any difference if you didn't release it. Well, for those people who are considering going to the
It'll
to the
change your
stores to
life.
check it out. Honestly, what does make this different from the other books that they could go to in the same type of section? Why should they pick this one up and spend the money and the time reading it?
Because I wrote it.
And I would have
The
expected
rhythm, the
nothing less.
dialogue. I mean, I think he's got a style that stands out, and that there's a little bit of a hunger for it in that it's sarcastic, it's cynical, so it's a little no holds barred that way. And I think people want to see those vulnerabilities, but not get sopped up in them. You know, I mean, it's the book has a hard edge to the writing, and it really moves you quickly through. So it's a style that's not necessarily done well and well in a lot of places. So I think, you know, and just from my third-hand perspective in Omaha, I'm talking to John as he was going to school. Writers come from all different, you know, vantage points, but it was kind of, I think, my perception is that there was a reception to him because of this hard-edged voice, you know, and maybe that's because where does this come from in Omaha, you know, this is something we'd get from the streets of Brooklyn or the streets of Chicago, you know, where the mean streets really are. But he does, you know, and any community's got its kind of harder edged pieces, and you know, and he mined, you know, what Omaha had in developing the story. But the story is really about the character and how that character, you know, I believe, you know, reveals himself and navigates this maze of this, you know, twisted story. Okay,
so knowing Jonathan the way that you do, similarities between Jonathan and Coburn and differences.
I think
I'd like to hear this.
Yeah. Well, I think there's certainly a lot of similarities in the sense of humor and in kind of the running commentary that kind of even runs in Coburn's head. The difference in knowing John for real is to know that in the book it's so exaggerated and taken to this kind of, you know, extra level. And of course you don't get to see the softer side, you know, the honest side of Jonathan like you know, like you can in the book. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's fair elements of him in the book, absolutely, and a little bit of the sarcasm and the cynicism. Oh yeah, they're trademarks. I mean, you know, I could see his folks laughing at that comment. You know, yeah.
Okay.
It's not me. It's not me. I'm not the narrator of that book, though.
Yeah.
I would like to point that out.
Yes.
Now, before we go on to the final few
Nor is
questions,
the publisher anything like me.
with the two of you being
actually.
journalists, most interesting story that you've ever covered. John, I'll go ahead and start with you.
That I've ever
Yeah.
covered? Oh gosh, there's all kinds of stories. It's kind of hard to pick a favorite.
Because those are the basis, obviously, they can turn into something like a first novel. So is there anything you've covered that is of great interest to you that...
I've never thought about really necessarily turning any of those into a novel, but I haven't written in quite a while, so it's hard for me to say, you know, in terms of anything that I've covered. But working at the Reader, we just did, I thought, some really good work in what was going on at Metro Community College and the president there. That was written by Tessa Jeffers, another really good, strong writer. You know, I tried to edit and help as best I could along the way. John had a bunch when he was, at the Weekly, I thought.
Anything that sticks out, John, other than?
Boy, what it's
World
it was
Herald lawsuit.
The World Herald
Nobody else
lawsuit,
heard
that was
about.
great.
Yeah,
No,
the class action lawsuit.
nobody. Yeah, that was great.
First one to break the paternity suit for Crouch. That was
We
a
did.
small story.
Yeah, but it was still kind of fun.
Yeah.
What else did we do? Oh, we did the ladders, the excuses and ladders.
That's right.
That
Funding in the fire department, the maintenance of the.
Okay. All right. So all right. Well,
We could go
let's not
on and
go
on.
mixing- Okay. So the future of Jonathan Segura.
Yes.
What can we expect to see? Is there going to be another book anytime soon?
Not soon. Hopefully there will be another one at some point. I'm at work on another novel currently, 1.5-ish, depending on how the wind blows, I guess. Okay. But yeah, work at the magazine at day, and then in the evening I go home and work some more. It's a great life.
Well, you're in town here for a few days. You are going to do a book signing, and we do
Yes.
have information on that. It will be this Saturday, the 12th at 1 o'clock. You'll be at the Bookworm, 8702 Pacific Street, right here in Omaha. Any other speaking engagements or anything that you have while you're here in town?
No, I believe that's it, actually.
Okay. All right, and we have some websites that we wanted to make sure that we put up for folks. For more information on Jonathan and his work, you can go to www.jonathansegura.com or www.simonsays.com. Any other contact information that we need to be giving out, or?
That's my publisher and me, and why not www.thereader.com.
And that's how we can get more information.
There's an
on-
interview with Jonathan in this week's issue.
Oh, there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so we'll look for that.
And we actually published an excerpt from the book if you want to taste.
Okay. And you've been at the Reader how long, John?
Well, since '94.
And you envision staying there? Are you going to go up and run to New York and start to?
No.
Come to New York.
Yay, no. Love what I'm doing, and there's plenty to write about and a lot more to do. So, look forward to doing as long as I guess they let me.
Okay. And Jonathan, you probably have a busy several weeks here in front of you. Where do you go after you do your book signing here? What's on tap for you?
I go back to New York. I do a reading. I have a reading in New York, and then back to work. Got to pay the bills.
Okay.
Sadly.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck with this first novel, and we hope that there are others to come. Thank you both so much for joining us. We appreciate it very much. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. The 11th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.